This is absolutely Essendon, and we are more than a little excited today to be joined by an Essendon star. He's a 93 premiership player and won the Crichton Medal that same year, if you don't mind. Went on to become captain of the Bombers in 96-97, played I think 243 games. Welcome to our little corner of the internet, Gary O'Donnell.
Thank you very much, Smoke and Joe. And people were wanting to actually have Glenn Kilpatrick, I reckon. They were expecting him, but you only get Gary O'Donnell today. Bad luck.
There's a lot of disappointment.
He was a pretty decent player, Glennie Kilpatrick. I think he ended up at Geelong, didn't he?
He did, and I think he had a stint at, he was North Melbourne either before us in the under-19s as well, and out from the east, the right side of town in Melbourne. So.
Yes, that is the one. We're going to come to that. But what makes this, for me, so poetic is that we're recording this the day after the Anzac Day game, which of course was a draw, and in fact you played in the very first Anzac Day game ever, which was also a draw. You were there yesterday. What are you feeling after seeing that and having played in the very first one?
Well, my biggest disappointment is these young upstarts that played in the game yesterday are taking our thunder away. We wanted to be the only draw, so
because it was mythical.
It was, and now they've done it, and it's not so important ours, but. It was a fabulous game to be there yesterday, and it was a good game too compared to the Melbourne-Richmond game the night before. It was pretty ordinary. It was a good game. Both sides looked like, obviously, Collingwood premiers last year. They're a good side. It looks like Essendon are starting to emerge. Yeah. So that's it. That's the exciting part of yesterday.
We totally agree.
We were able to get the 2 points. Yeah. Could have gone either way. Disappointing that we didn't get the win, but but just it was fabulous to be there again.
Do you ever feel like, because you're in pretty good shape, do you ever feel like, geez, I'd love to go out for 10 minutes and just take care of a couple of things, sort out Pendlebury maybe?
Well, I'm about, wouldn't bruise a grape, but at times I'd like to actually play and be on an opposition player. So that's how I started my career, got with a bit of tagging. Yeah. I reckon that's about all I'd be worth now.
Do you reckon you would have taken Dacos?
It's interesting because he bounces around everywhere.
He does.
But he might have been one early in the early days I'd play on because just make it 17 on 17 the rest of the team, and then you can take out one bloke. But it's harder because these years or these times it's a lot of team defence, so you've got to work together as well. But that'd be an interesting one. I used to play on his father a lot.
Right, I was going to say you'd know his dad pretty well.
And played on him lots of times. So I know what they're like. They're bloody good players. They're the top echelon. They're wonderful to watch.
Yeah, true. I think Nick probably went close to getting the medal yesterday. I mean, it was probably a line ball between McGrath, Merritt, and possibly Dacos from the Pies.
Yeah, possibly. I didn't think he had as much influence as he can have. I thought if the bloke had a kick straight for Collingwood and they end up winning, Brodie Myercheck, whose father played for Essendon back in the 70s, right. Jack, number 8. He might have won the medal. He was pretty impressive up there. He had 7 or 8 shots at goal. But
he was. So are you encouraged by the signs down at Bomberland? Because I know you can be a little vocal on Twitter, which we love. What's your overall feeling about the state of affairs?
Still a few gaps in the side, but I think the commitment to defence and when the opposition have got the footy is starting to look a little bit better and starting to be a little bit more consistent. Right. Throw out the Port Adelaide game earlier this year. That was an aberration, hopefully. Yeah. The other 6 games we've played have at least had a better level of defence than other years, and that's been our key thing. Yeah. I still think we need another key forward. So, one of those, the big, strong marking type. The Charlie Curnow, the Harry Mackay, the Mackay, however you pronounce it, in the side, that sort of type. But
both players, by the way, who we could have drafted
before Francis and Parrish, yes,
So that's an interesting one. We often talk about our drafting history here.
Spilt milk now.
It is.
And look, I reckon it's a makeshift forward line, and the connection between mids and forwards is a development area. But I think in the back half of the ground, we're starting to shore up. So it's good to see Ben come from North Melbourne. He's been very good this year.
True.
And, when Ridley comes back, and then I think Zach Reed's got a real chance.
Yeah.
You've got 3 real big, strong talls that can play on teams.
How good could Ridley become when he's not taking on the big opposition forward and plays more of that sort of quarterbacking type role out of the back line?
Already a Crichton medalist and still young in his career. Yeah, he's exciting. And then you throw the little guys, the McGraths, those types that can do the roles on the mids to smalls. And I think that's shored up now.
Yeah.
Not a bad midfield. At times they can defend better.
Yeah.
But certainly, it's on the up.
Yeah.
I would have thought most Essendon supporters after 8 games this year, at the start of the year for 4.5, they'd go, we take that. With the draw we had.
We agree. Yeah. We totally agree. So it sounds like when you're on the couch watching the game over in Perth, you still get a little wound up.
I do. I can scream. I'll sit there with my partner and we might be on the bed just sitting watching in the bedroom, and I'd be looking back, did you see that? Did you see that?
And my wife usually shuts the door at that stage. So.
It's either that or it's at the local pub with a few mates.
Very nice.
I live in Perth, but the most wonderful thing coming back to Melbourne around an Essendon game and Anzac Day is just to see people walking around the CBD in Essendon gear. It's sort of, I've got a connection with you.
Yeah.
Not because I played, because I follow the footy team and the footy club. And, we're sort of kindred spirits. I really love that, coming back to Melbourne.
But Gary, you did play, and by God, what an incredible career you had at the Bombers, from, I think, North Ringwood, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, in the zone there. Yep. So
who else came out of that zone? It was
we had Paul Salmon,
Fish, of course.
Peter Banfield. Yep. So the 3 of us were in the same
Darren
junior
Williams,
side. Now he was Vermont.
Okay, so still east, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. Kevin Walsh was North Ringwood.
Spitfire.
Spitfire. He ended up a bloody good player.
He did. Very valuable. Very valuable.
Yeah, Sheeds loved him, and the boys reckon he mowed his lawn.
Now I heard a rumour. You may or may not know this, but in the '84 grand final, when he was taken out by Dipia Domenico, he was coming off the ground, and Sheedy told the trainers to make sure that he was carried off on a stretcher, to make sure that it fired up the rest of the lads. So I don't know if there's any truth in that story, but it's certainly a good one.
We'll go with that. We'll go with that, and because it's something that I don't think Kevin was that. That day, he was. I think he was in fair. Not Kevin Sheedy, Kevin Walsh.
Kevin Walsh. Yeah, he was definitely taken out.
Yeah, he was taken out. Yeah. So
he did make a little wave at the crowd as he was coming off.
Yeah, as if to say, "I'm only doing this because Sheed's told me." Exactly. No, I think he was in fairyland for a while.
So let's talk a bit about your storied career. So you spent a little while playing in the reserves. I think you played about 60 odd games.
Yeah, well, it was in the times where, so it was 19 or 20 under 19 games as well in 84.
Right.
Played so you came to the club in 84 was your first year?
Yep. 5 games in the reserves that year, sort of, up and down there, and then 3 years in the reserves before I got a game in the last game of 87. I think in those days, the development you got in the seconds was still pretty good. Because even though you had only one senior coach and 2 assistants that were part-time, that Sheeds was the only full-time bloke, you were able to play against the best players that were not in the opposition side. So they might be coming back from injury or maybe a little... So you played on big bodies, you played on men... And I got a lot of roles just to chase blokes around. Did you feel that was
good for your career to have that sort of apprenticeship?
I think so. Yeah. I thought I could have played a year earlier.
Okay.
But, them's the breaks.
Yeah.
When I coached at Brisbane, we might talk about, and at Essendon later on,
for sure.
I used to tell young players coming in, you're here for a career, not a game. Because they get impatient. I should be in the side. They have friends, family... saying, they should be playing you already.
When you're making the debut.
Mate, when you get into the side, you want to be ready so that you don't get spat out. I saw plenty of players in my time get a game ahead of me, but only play a handful of games and their career was over. Yes, I got a good grounding. And when I finally got that game, it was against Collingwood, last game of 87. didn't get on till half time
as well.
So the days where I was running in front of the members.
He was really...
Remember me, Sheeds? Yeah, I'm here.
Was that at Windy Hill? Or?
No, it was at the MCG. Both teams couldn't make the finals. Myself and Brendan Moore came into the side, and he left out Shane Hurd and Roger Merritt.
Okay,
right.
Shane Hurd, a great defensive run-with player, of course.
So Paul Vanderhaar got injured late in the first half, and I was able to get on and actually played on Dacos in the second half.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a baptism of fire.
On and off the ball. So he'd done okay. He'd kicked about 3 goals and had about 15 touches on and off the ball, and he got 3 touches in the second half.
But
he kicked a goal with about 7 or 8 minutes to go, and they win by 5 points. So I'm walking off going, dude, bloody hell, that's my fault. So, but good experience.
And what's the pressure for a young guy like in that situation when you've got players like Danaher and Madden and Watson?
Yeah.
There's some legends there that you would have been, aware of as you were.
I think
recent double premiership.
That was good for my development as well. Growing as a player whilst playing in the seconds with so many champions are at the club in that 84, 85 era. So, we had Terry as the captain, but there could have been 4 or 5 other blokes that captained the side. So that was really good. That you get your development you get from that was great. And I think probably that allows a young bloke coming into the side, although I wasn't that young. I was 22 and a half when I got the first game.
Your debut. Yeah, right.
You sort of, like really hard perhaps for the North Melbourne kids at the moment coming into a side that hasn't won much. That's true. Their confidence would be belted around.
Ben Mackay has already had his most successful season as an AFL footballer.
Has he? And we're 7-8 games in. Yeah.
So it's a fair point to make, isn't it? That being around winning mentality helps that development.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Amazing.
Yep.
So you made your senior debut in 87. Missed that kind of brilliant 83 to 85 period. Club had a bit of a lull. Few injuries, if I recall. Watson did his knee, and I think Vanderhaar broke his leg at some stage during that period.
And Daisy Williams as well.
Daisy,
missed
of course,
a year.
who was a very important part of that side.
Yep.
But you came back and built up, and we got to 1990. The team looked like it was heading towards a premiership that year. And then we had an interesting scenario for those that weren't aware. West Coast drew with Collingwood. I think it was in the semi-final or the second semi. Yeah. Tell me, you guys were watching that. You had the week off.
Yep.
Then you had to have another week off. How did that affect the momentum going into the 90 grand final?
Yeah, bloody Peter Sumich.
So
missed a shot from, it was on a 45-degree angle, but he'd kick it, 8 out of 10, and he missed, caused the draw. What happened that day? So we knew we had the week off. Sheeds had flogged us for a week.
Right.
And then we knew that we're going to have another week without playing. We'd be flogged again for another week. So Fish and I, we all went out as a group to watch the game out at Waverley.
Right.
And the guys from the Essendon area caught a bus together. Fish and I, we lived in Ringwood still, so we drove out and we drove back so we didn't have to go to Essendon.
Yeah.
And we weren't on the bus, but they left a little bit early. If anyone remembers Waverley, the car park, it was a car park for about 5 hours after the game.
It was a traffic jam.
So they'd left early. They were all listening to that game, the end of it, on the bus. And when Sumich missed and then, it's a draw, the bus was like, you could hear a pin drop.
Yeah.
It was, no, we've got another week off.
Yeah, right.
And also to compound that, we'd rested a couple of players in the last game of the year, and we had the 4 Danahers play together.
That's
down at Moorabbin,
wasn't it? Yeah.
So some blokes hadn't played for
3 or 4 weeks.
So it was a nightmare.
Yeah. So you think that took the air out of it a little bit in leading into the grand final against Collingwood?
Well, we got flogged in the second semi the following week when we finally played Collingwood, but we did have the chance to play another game, the prelim.
That was against the Eagles.
The Eagles, and we won fairly comfortably. So, you can't blame that. The grand final, we sort of had 2 games to get the things going again, but we just. We were really disappointing that day.
Yeah,
it was.
But got off to a good start. If I remember, we got the first 2 goals. I think
kicked 2 goals
was
too.
Active early in that game.
Yep,
they got a couple towards the end of that quarter, and then of course the infamous brawl.
Always saw him plenty of attention as Kelly. these guys. And usually this does happen early on in a grand final, not at the quarter-time break. Kick it forward.
Yeah. Tell me about your role in that, Gary, because it was a little bit UFC.
My role was because I'm about as tough as butter. I jumped the fence. I was in row 6. I was sitting with a little old lady having a cup of tea. And she said, Gary, you can get back on now. The fight's finished. But no, it was just, you've just got to make sure you got your wits about you. I'm more of someone who will grab one of our blokes that might get himself into trouble.
And pull him away.
Yeah.
You didn't get to TD in time.
Yes.
No, well, that was the thing. It wasn't TD. Yeah, TD had a little bit of hidden mongrel in him.
Yeah.
And that's how he was a really dogged sort of fantastic player. My most admired player. I love Terry.
Yeah, okay.
So good.
Yeah. And don't you think a team needs mongrel if you're going to go all the way?
Oh, yeah, you do. Yeah. Look, and you've got to use it in the right way.
Yeah.
But back in those days, geez, there was a couple of mongrels for us and a couple for Hawthorn. Yeah, you looked at some of the replays and you go, gee,
that's different time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was
almost criminal.
I'd call it cowardice. Hitting blokes or kneeing
we won't
them when
name
you're not
names
looking.
from Hawthorn.
No, not at all.
We know who we're talking
we
about.
We won't name our names either. So,
we had a certain number 25 back in those days.
25, there was a guy from was he West Perth?
The truck driver.
And bus driver. Initials BD, but we won't name him. Look, it was on. It was anarchy almost on the ground. But
and we weren't the same team after that, right?
They seemed to recover.
They did, and I think by the sound of things, Lee Matthews was a little bit more measured in his speech at quarter time than what Sheeds was. Sheeds had been involved in a blue on the other side of the ground,
the boundary line.
Gubby Allen.
Yeah, that's right.
Gubby Allen may well have hit our runner, Peter Power.
There was. I remember the footage. There was a couple of the trainers, and
then Sheeds may well have had a swing as well. I don't know. It's urban myth, maybe. But
wow.
So he was. That's the frame of mind he was in. I think just Collingwood in the first 5 or 10 minutes of that second quarter put their head over the footy better than us. Got 5 or 6 free kicks, which full credit to them.
I think the umps went with them for a while.
The rest is history.
And they had the Darren Mullane factor, who was such a force that day, wasn't he?
They did, And look, everything fell into place. Tony Shaw, he's this high.
Yeah.
Couldn't kick further than 20 metres, but fabulous leader.
He got the Norm Smith that day.
He did, and he had a great game, and he rallied his troops, and full credit to him. But to be in the team that, for the first time for 32 years, to lose to Collingwood in a grand final was really disappointing.
Well, the joke, of course, who kicked 5 goals in the 1990 grand final.
We were lucky, though, in 3 years later, that the opposition team kicked exactly the same score, but we kicked about, 15 more. So
nice transition, Gary. Very nice.
He's an expert at this.
Yes.
So that perfectly segues into the baby Bombers era. Yes. And you weren't quite a baby at that time, but you were still at probably the middle part of your career.
Yeah, it was in the second half, probably. I was 28.
Okay. 28. You were shepherding the flock.
Yes, it was like herding cats with some of these young blokes, especially off the field. They enjoyed themselves.
We did want to come to that.
Yeah, so tell me, when you were watching these guys coming in, the likes of Mercury, Hurd, Fletcher, Masiti, Calthorpe, Olorenshaw, and on it goes. What was your feeling as a senior player? Did you feel... Because I've heard Sheedy say that he got Watson back for that year because he felt he just needed that seniority to cap off what he felt could be a premiership team.
It was amazing. Look, every year that you played at Essendon in that era, you went into the year, Sheeds had us all thinking if we do the right things, we're a chance to win the premiership.
Right.
So that was the mindset we came from. Yeah. But just these blokes that come together, a few of them had played the year before in the reserves premiership under Dennis Pagan.
And didn't Terry and Simon Madden
they played as well?
Yep. Game? And they're like farewell, almost a farewell, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah. So, these kids just, little did we know, there's going to be probably 5 or 6 of them will end up in Essendon's Hall of Fame, and 3 or 4 will end up in the AFL Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
We didn't know that at that time, but there was some special players too, and they just came into the club and gave enthusiasm.
Yeah.
They just loved their footy.
Yeah.
And it rubbed off on the older players, definitely.
Did they have a confidence about them? What was the X factor?
Almost a swagger. Never knew how to lose, or never thought in any game when you were struggling that we're going to lose. We're still a chance to win.
Yeah.
And David Whedon was an assistant coach at that point. Neil Danaher as well, the great Neil Danaher.
Yeah.
And we only had 10 team rules, and we just practiced, or it was commanded of us in certain situations. That's what you did.
Right.
Oh, really?
They were pretty simple. Like it was, don't handball off the ground, for example.
Right.
Always, when you get it off the ground, you always handball.
Right.
No U-turns.
Right.
Don't have someone run and pass, give it to him.
Yeah.
Just simple things like that. And the kids did it to an A grade level.
Yeah.
And geez, didn't we have some important times in games over that year where a kid would step up and get us over the line, or just played above themselves for their age and were great for the team.
It was the baby bombers, but there was still Mark Harvey, Bomber Thompson, Gary O'Donnell,
Paul Salmon,
Tim Watson.
Yep.
There was that senior core of players that, really kind of helped guide that young team through. So as much as they were the excitement, there was still that steady hand there at the helm.
And you had a middle group as well. So you had, Chris Danaher, David Grenville.
Yeah.
You haven't mentioned Darren Buick, who's only a year younger than me.
Michael Long.
Longy. Who can forget Longy? Sean Denham, Peter Somerville. They'd all been around, and 10 of us had been in that losing grand final. So that we were still licking our wounds.
And of course, Derek Kickett was in the 1990 grand final side, but and we don't want to go over old ground. I think that's been well documented, but unfortunately didn't make the 93 grand final.
Yep.
So
it was the olive branch since that they've made up, Sheeds and him, but unfortunately it's a team game.
Yeah.
And you'd have to argue it was the right decision at the end.
It was, and even if it wasn't, I think Derek had every right. He played every game. He'd won a couple of games off his own boot. I think he kicked 8 goals against the Bulldogs towards the end of the year.
He'd had a great season.
And he just hadn't had a kick for a month. But I think, personally, I'm not speaking for other players, the way he reacted to his omission was a little bit over the top. I think, if it was me, I'd be devastated. Yeah. But you just got to, fall into line. Yeah. Give the team the best chance of winning, and then have your gripe. After the game, but that we're all different.
Sure.
And Derek's he's a beauty. He's a bloody good fella. But I think if he had his time again, hopefully he'd change the way he went about it. So, anyone know who else got omitted out of the prelim side in '93? Who was the other bloke that missed the grand final? Yeah, so we had 2. So Wallace and Harvey came into this grand final side. Kickett and someone else
that played
went out.
in the Adelaide game.
They played in the Adelaide game.
We want to come to the Adelaide game.
It wasn't Chris Danaher, was it?
It was Chris played in the grand final. It was David Flood.
Oh, David Flood.
So, and you never heard from David Flood, did you?
No.
So
you're right.
That's the sort. There's a hard luck story in every grand final team. But
I bet he fronted up at pre-season and put it.
And I bet he was as upset and disappointed as Derek missing out on a grand final. But
So if we go, we probably didn't do it in the right order, but it doesn't matter anyway because we still love reliving it. But that game against Adelaide, the preliminary final, we were down at
42 points, I think. At half-time.
I think it was.
6 goals, 6 actually. It was.
Was it? Yeah. And so we were down. It was not looking good at all. A lot of it has been spoken about what Sheedy said at halftime, whether there was anything mythical about it or whether he just said, hey, stick to those 10 basic things. I'd love to know what made the difference, do you think?
I think it's just reinforcing what we do well, those 10 things. Also just we're not going to win it in the first 5 or 10 minutes of the third quarter. It's just going to be a process where you just got to chip away at it. And I think Mark Harvey was injured. He came in screaming and yelling at halftime. He was hoping that we win, so he'd come back into the team the next week. Mark Thompson was very measured. He was good. You don't really remember what a coach says at times. I think I don't know. I might be wrong. Sheeds might have been talking about demarcation lines or something, and so straight away there's 10 blokes that can't even spell it, let alone understand what it means.
It takes your mind off the game. Start again, kind of thing, almost, isn't it?
Yeah, funny story. West Coast the week before that, we played and beat them at the MCG. Mm-hmm. Sheeds used the analogy. He had, the Tiananmen Square, the student being run over by tanks.
Yeah,
he had the big picture on the whiteboard.
Yeah,
and he said, "You know what? West Coast are this big conglomerate, one state team. They're the tanks. You know who we are? We are that defiant student that are going to beat them today, and everything they give us, we're going to just be defiant." And that was the theme that day. We're waiting just to run out. There's about 5 of us at the front, and there's a few blokes still in the toilet, coming in. Tim Watson said to, "You know what happened to that student in front of the tank?" We knew what happened, but what, Tim? He goes, "They mailed him back to his parents in an envelope." And there was 5 of us, including Tim, on the ground, almost
in the
fetal position, laughing. So that sort of cut the tension as well. So
that's beautiful.
That was a beauty.
That's
but
beautiful.
Look, I think we didn't miss in the third quarter in the prelim.
And I think Buick came alive, didn't he? In that
6 goals straight, mate. Yeah, and he was kicking them from the pie stand. One at the punt road end there. It was just. So that's the key. You've got to keep kicking your goals.
Yeah.
Reducing the margin. We were lucky Andrew Jarman missed a set shot from about 25 directly in front.
Yes, that's right.
Because he was both Jarman boys are great kicks, and he missed. The pressure got to him, and we were able to keep kicking them. And
what's the feeling, Gary, when you've cleared that hurdle, the siren goes, and in 7 days you're on the big stage for the grand final? Is it sheer excitement or is it relief? What do you feel when you're going to the final?
It was a bit of both, because it was the chance for redemption after 1990. So it was fantastic, and I'd had the whole week mapped out, if it happened, of what I'd do differently from the previous time. So I was still working full time in the Commonwealth Bank. So, for example, we went and did the grand final parade, and it ended up at not at the steps of Parliament. It was where the big dome is. I can't even remember that shopping centre here. What's the indoor dome or the Spire?
Melbourne Central, is it?
Melbourne Central.
Yeah,
that's right. So it ended up there in the foyer there, and rather than go home, I went back to work in the afternoon.
Did you say you were just popping out for lunch or something?
Something like that, yeah.
I might be a little late.
I just wanted it to be as normal as possible. Had my can of Coke and my little chocolate bar as I did with the other staff at the end of the Friday day, and
love it.
Just tried to keep it normal.
And then the big day itself, of course. I mean, what's the night before? Are you a bag of nerves, or you?
Yeah.
Okay, how did you?
And there a lot of trips to the toilet
over time. You sort of get, I've played quite a few games and quite a few big games playing with Essendon. So I remember one Anzac Day, we played Carlton at Princess Park, and I was late coming up Eastern Freeway from Ringwood, and I was half an hour late. Missed the start of the meeting, and I've had to go in and sort of sit down, and she goes, "Sit down, O'Donnell," and I was beside myself. It had never happened before, and it takes me a while to get ready pre-game. But that day, they play the last post. They do the national anthem. It was the first time when we were lining up, I could just go, "You beauty." So I remember
made it.
That was early in my career.
Yeah.
I knew that every big game, generally there's a national anthem.
Yeah.
If I was uptight or feeling rushed, I knew that I had that time to relax.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Before a game. Look, there was some times where you didn't sleep very well.
Yeah.
I didn't go to bed till about midnight though, but I wouldn't wake up till about 10.
Right.
So it was the routine, and I knew if I didn't sleep well, I'd just sink into the bed and say, "Okay, you'd accept it. Okay, I'm not going to go to sleep, but I'm feeling like I'm in this big hole in bed, and at least my body's resting.
Yeah, sure.
And you know what? You think like that, you go to sleep anyway.
Yeah.
Paul van der Haar played some of his best games on the back of no sleep. So.
And six stubbies as well.
But what worked for you, I think, is whenever I think of you and my recollections of you is that you were just the ultimate professional. Now, I don't know whether you really were, but it sounds like you had a few systems.
You got the Mr. Reliable tag, I think.
You did. And, you know, I think a lot of the players could learn from that today.
Yeah. Look, a few years back, Sheeds, when he comes to Perth, he always looks me up. He's a beauty.
Yeah, okay.
But he said, Gary, you were the most professional player I coached.
Oh, really?
So that's
saying something.
He's probably told 10 others.
Right.
So you walk around,
Even Van der Haar.
He said that to Vander as well.
While Vander's lighting up in the change room.
Whatever you say.
So, look, you've got to leave. I think that's the key to consistency as well. I wasn't the best player that's ever played, but I'm hoping that people think that some of my worst games were at some sort of level as well.
I would
with
agree.
the consistency.
And we were in fact talking about this in one of our previous episodes about what makes a star. And it's not necessarily being the most skillful or the guy that can get 40 possessions in a game. It's the guy that can just do that week in, week out and do his job. And, and Zach Merritt is that type. I mean, he is a superstar, but certainly the consistency of performance is really an important part.
And what's
of it.
been lacking at the club and what hurts, and, why we started this channel, because we would just wind each other up.
Yeah.
And so,
you mentioned Zach Merritt. I think like he won 3 Crichtons.
Oh, he's got
2.
4.
He's got 4, but 2 years ago, and he had a lot of chinks in his game that he can improve. He's done that a lot. And if people are watching him that are playing with him, they are getting an education.
They're jumping on.
I'm really impressed with his last 2 years.
He had 8 tackles yesterday.
Yeah,
Incredible.
He's just gone from your player that might get you 35 and go, but he's complete now.
Yeah,
and hopefully that's rubbing off on his team.
I think it is, and you can see that edge to the oft spoken about edge is really something that is now a reality. It was occasional last year and previous seasons. Now you feel a sense of confidence that they're going to bring it. Every time. So.
I don't mind when Brad Scott came out and said that because it makes people accountable.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, the public now knows, and we've copped a lot as Essendon supporters for various reasons.
Yes.
And we will cop it now if we don't produce.
Right.
So the players, there it is. It's on the line.
You've got to live up to the brand.
You've got to live up to it.
Yeah.
And if you can't, you move on.
So how satisfying, talking of the Crichton medal, how satisfying was it for you to win it in 93 on the back of Wanganeen winning the Brownlow, Michael Long starring in the grand final.
Norm Smith medalist in the grand final.
But you winning, that must have been satisfying because that was a pretty high bar.
And Tim
being
Watson was King of Moomba that year too, so let's not
Father of the year.
Or Father of the Year, quite right.
As well.
So we won everything that year, didn't we?
It was a clean sweep.
It was, look, every other best and fairest at Essendon that's won in other years, I can't even talk to them now. I can talk to Fletch. He won in 2000, didn't he? No, look, it was a fabulous honour. And again, it's probably the consistency
and you beat
as well.
Wanganeen, which is interesting because as the Brownlow medalist, you kind of thought, he must be the favourite.
I think he was about 6th or 7th though. There was 4 or 5 in front of him, and best and fairest or club champion, whatever you want to call him, judged differently, and it's a 3-2-1 in the Brownlow. Yeah. You can be the 4th best player in 15 games and not get a vote. But Gav had a wonderful year. I just wish he had kicked that goal. I think in the grand final, it would have been the goal of the century in a grand final, mate.
It was incredible. Yes. But so, and I don't know whether you probably do know this, and you're probably regretting it now. But when the siren went in the '93 grand final, someone had the ball in their hands and kicked it away.
Yeah.
Do you know who that someone was?
It was, and if the siren had have gone for a fraction earlier,
1.5 seconds,
I would have gone up the jumper, boom, and no one's getting it.
And that'll be on the mantelpiece,
eBay,
right?
Or eBay for $10,200.
So just for a bag of wind.
Yeah.
Yeah, look.
Because I think your arms went up in the air and after kicking the ball away.
You were pumped.
Exhilaration.
Rightly so.
It was. After the despair 3 years earlier. I think, the 84-85 grand finals, Gary Folds, number 10, might add the footy as well at the end.
Gary Folds,
Yes. Gary definitely had it once, and I think Terry might have had it, but kicked it and it sort of landed with Gary.
Yeah.
So,
correct.
The 3 grand finals.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Number 10
just on the number 10 though, I think we talked about, what would be. Did that put pressure on you as a player, knowing you were getting what is perhaps the most revered jumper in the football club?
Not at all. No. I wore 56, 46, 44 and 10.
Right.
44 in the seniors for 2 years. I think I've still got the club record for games in 44.
44.
Yeah, so
I remember
Steve Alessio was...
Right.
He wore 44, but he moved to 27 before.
Yeah.
But back when we played and Sheeds was a coach, he actually was a big one for giving numbers to people that are going to hopefully carry that number. Whereas these days, most clubs just hand them out like lollies. So that's a little bit disappointing at times. But I got the option of number 10 or number 12 or keep 44.
Right.
And I was born on the 12th. Always wore 12 as a kid and in the under-19s. Mm-hmm. And, Barry Capuano, number 12, and a few guys I knew from the 60s.
Yeah.
But, when it was a no-brainer. Number 10. Just the people before us, Bluey Shelton.
Yeah. And Sheedy wore that as well.
Sheeds wore 10, so he didn't give that out lightly.
No.
Jack Baggett, who captained the side back
the great Jack
early.
Baggett,
So didn't play a lot of games with there was a lot of history. Alan Noonan as well. So just to be able just to be asked if you wanted that number was in the Sheedy era.
Yeah. It really meant something.
It meant something, and I just
you honoured that number too, Gary. No question about it.
Hopefully,
big
you
time.
certainly did.
Big time.
You certainly. Gary,
big time.
Captaincy. You were captain in 86, 87?
96,
Sorry,
97.
I'm a little old, guys.
Yes.
96, 97, of course.
Yes. You did,
Another honour. How did that come around? Because if it was Bomber was before you, is that correct?
It was, and Bomber, he was still going to play broken arm in 96. He was still around anyway, and it was a pass-on situation. Paul Salmon had gone to Hawthorn at the start of 96, so he might have been another option.
Yeah.
Probably Mark Harvey was a chance as well.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know, in the old days it was the match committee, Sheeds, Brian Donahue, those types that sort of, voted on that. In these days, you have your player. Everyone contributes to who they think.
Yeah. It's like it's a democratic system.
It is, and who typifies the brand or the trademark that the club wants to play in. But Sheeds offered it again, something that you don't aspire to, but if it's handed or if it's there available, you just take it up.
Well deserved. But I'm curious what the dynamic is like when you go from one of the boys rolling on the ground, Sheeds is here. Hey, Longy, cut it out.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, I didn't really. In that sense, I wasn't one of the boys as well.
Oh, really? Maybe that's what made you a good choice.
Possibly, yeah.
Look, I liked the Iceman in the corner, right?
I liked a good time though off the field at times.
I think you made a reference to nightclubs in your Crichton Medal speech.
I could have, yes.
We do have footage of it. You may see it later when we do the post, but
there was you have to let your hair down at times in a season, and I'd look at the draw and say, we're playing on a Friday night. We don't play till the following Sunday, and that happens 3 or 4 times during the year.
Yeah.
That's the night. Well, that's the Saturday night. I'm going to have a big one.
Yeah,
really.
And you pencil it in. You might get a corky or something in the Friday night game. And not allowed to drink, and so then you miss that. So there you go.
I thought you'd say you get a corky at the tunnel or something.
Was it the tunnel or the metro?
I don't know where it was.
There was a few. There
one
was
of the pubs
Chevron,
out near
there
Windy
was
Hill.
Down Under, there was plenty.
You made mention of some of the baby bummers and their off-field exploits. The baby bombers and their off-field exploits. Any that were the hardest to corral or keep under control?
Yeah, Kelthorpe, Mercedes, Smoking Joe.
You wanted a moment to think about that, Gary. Right. I mean, you seem to...
Ricky Oller was good at it.
Yeah.
Who else? Gavin Wanganeen was a bit quiet, but I think those guys in 2 or 3 years were able to, influence him.
Were they? They got to him after he got the Brownlow. They said enough of
correct.
that.
Correct. Mercury was smooth as he was on the field
and off the field,
and it was just all the old blokes on the main.
Hurdy, he was always more of a family man, right?
So I think he had a girlfriend earlier.
Yeah,
so you want some of your young blokes to. It's like this Harley Reid now. They've got to get him a girlfriend in Perth so he stays in Perth.
Well, we can find a few over here for him. Harley, if you're watching.
Yes, you're coming.
Do you remember the great Glenn Hawker by any chance?
Yes.
I'm talking about after-hours activities.
Yeah, yes. He was a night owl.
Yes.
Had a good mate, Vander.
Yes.
But Hawks, geez, he's in the top 3 I've ever seen for skill. Left and right.
Amazing.
He had so...
Yeah.
His touch was so good. So not only was
he
the
a left
direction...
footer?
No, he's a right footer.
But he could kick the ball well with his left.
But it was also, if he had to kick 30, he'd kick 30.
Yeah.
40,
like
50.
A tape measure.
He could landed 3 different kicks in a row in a bin at 30, 40 and 50.
A little like Leon Baker whilst we're going back to that time. You played a couple of seasons probably with Baker, I would think.
Yes, just 1 or 2 before I got
I remember out at Windy Hill looking at training one night and Baker was doing some passing exercises with the trainer was like 20 metres away, just bang them, bang, 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 like bullets.
Yep.
It was just incredible to watch.
Another wonderful player. I got, 1 year I think of senior footy, but then, 3 when I was in the reserves that you witness, you view, you observe and you improve.
Yeah.
So Gary, back to the current day. You're captain of the football club. You did that for a couple of years and then retirement from footy.
Yep.
Tell us what happened, if you can, at that point in time in your career.
I was moved on, like most players.
Yeah.
Not many get the chance to retire on their own terms. At that point, I might have been vice president of the Players Association.
Okay, right.
And there was a rule coming in 99 where it was like a sup list for veterans, like a vets list, that half your salary went to the salary cap and half was outside it. So it allowed clubs to keep you on longer. Right. No, it allowed clubs to keep you on longer. Not that I was earning any big money either, but so I had got word that they were gunning for me anyway. And the Monday after the Marshmallow game it was, when 98, the losing game there, that was my last game. Only played a half that game. Got
so had
half
already become captain that season?
He was 97. 98, sorry, yes, he was 98. So he was the captain. So I was still there just as a player.
Yeah.
And turned up to the exit meeting, they call them, on the Monday, and it was Matty Drain, who was the footy manager at that point, Sheeds, and they said, "Oh, Gary, you're done. We're not going with you." And I said, "Oh, what about the vets list? You're done, Gary." So,
but did you feel that you were, or did you?
Well, I thought
obviously you would have felt you could go a bit longer.
I thought I had another year, but in hindsight, it was a good decision. It might have been a half a year.
Okay.
And it might have been you'd be in and out, and I don't think that's good for anyone. I think when you get to that stage, you move on, and it allows 22 games or 23 these days for someone else to get development in the seniors.
And you ended up being a one-club player.
Yeah, of course.
Which I think today you must reflect on that and think, that's a special thing. That your career, and you talked about the joy of seeing Essendon supporters in the street. Essendon was such an important part of your career, and to be a one-club player, a captain, a best and fairest winner, it's an incredible career that you had with the footy club. Yeah, and look, you just make hay while the sun shines. And, it's held me in good stead for exiting players as well, I hope, in the coaching roles that I've had since. Yeah. Lee Matthews, as manager, had come to me and said, "What's Gary doing now?" Sorry, his manager had come to my manager, or maybe even Lee had rung my manager at the time about a month before that. Oh, right. Before the season finished. And said, "What's Gary doing next year?" So, you know what? The great Lee Matthews knew I was finished as a player. But as a coach, he was specifically thinking of you in a coaching role. He just got the job. Okay. Yeah, it wasn't to play, no. It wasn't to play. Oh, no. Right, he knew as well that Gary O'Donnell's looking a bit slow. And I might use him as a coach. So,
my manager said, look, we'll wait till the end of the year. And as soon as I got the move on, he was on the phone again. And
so on that note, you went on to be an assistant coach there at Brisbane during their three-peat. You were there for all three premierships, were you?
Correct, and the fourth one that we lost against Port Adelaide. And it was still in the days where the game had sort of been professional for 2 or 3 years. We didn't have anyone working anymore. And there was only 3 assistants that he took up, with myself, Magic McLean, wonderful fellow, wonderful player, and Matty Armstrong from Fitzroy, North Melbourne. And then he had 2 guys in the fitness area, head of fitness Craig Starcevich, and a guy called Scott Murphy, who was the head weights conditioning bloke, who's high performance, who's now at Geelong. He's a wonderful bloke, Scott Murphy.
CV, isn't it?
It is. And there was 5 of us, and Lee. Now they've got to cast 1,000. There's almost one person for one player these days.
And they split them up into groups at half time, and
they
the mids and the forwards all break off, don't they?
Yeah.
So did you aspire to becoming a senior coach? Is that something
I
you
didn't.
looked for?
No, never did. I wanted to dip my toe in the water, though, in coaching. I actually had Wayne Jackson, who was the CEO at the AFL at the time, ring me and say, Gary, what are you doing next year? There might be a role for you that we're going to have at head office. So that would have been a sliding doors moment as well.
You could be in the big job now.
I don't know about that, but it would have given you good development post football as well. Also had Gary Ayres. I sat next to him at the grand final of '98, the Adelaide St Kilda game, wasn't it?
Right.
Was it North Melbourne. Adelaide, North Melbourne. Yeah. And he actually said, Gary, what are you doing next year? He was coaching Geelong at that point. Right. I said, come to... yesterday, I actually said yes to Lee. So it took me 3 weeks to make a decision to go to Brisbane. Yeah. And it was the best thing I did.
A fantastic decision in hindsight.
I think people that... have their whole career both playing or coaching or in football that stay in Melbourne are very insular. I think it's still the VFL. People have no idea what interstate clubs have to go through and what they have to face. And I think it adds to your development as a person to move interstate to one of the clubs interstate and get more development.
Essendon whinges about travelling, but really, I mean, the interstate clubs go, well, what's this whinging about having to travel?
But 2001... The opposition that day was your beloved Red and Black.
Yep.
Yeah. I know you would have been absolutely thrilled with the Lions win, but there must have been a little bittersweet moment there.
Yeah. Well, look, whoever's paying the wages and where your passion is, that's where you are. So I was fully with Brisbane, but it felt strange. It did, because after the game on the ground, I went up and saw Sheeds and saw Robert Shaw, and it was I almost regret doing it because they were in such a state as well, of disappointment. That they might have been going, Gary, piss off. Yeah. But look. It was a fabulous team and at the start of a fabulous dynasty.
Yeah. What it really was.
I kind of wish now that we had a loss to Essendon so that Essendon had one more flag than the other two big clubs. But
Now, did Brad Scott play on hurt that day?
He did. Yeah, he did a good job. I
heard he was carrying an injury. I think, wasn't he?
I think he might have been, but that's spilt milk as well.
Because Longy pulled out just before the game. There was just a feeling that. This was and then the weather. I think it was a 28
It was a hot game.
And the Lions coming down. It's just a lot of the tea leaves.
It was typical. The hot weather helped us in '93 too. Carlton were probably old and we had it was Speed Kills on our... there it is on the... Speed Kills was our... the Transport Accident Commission, our major sponsor. That was 2001 as well.
It was.
And not only Hurdy, there might have been a couple of others that were struggling, but... that is, you walk onto a ground to play, you are 100%.
How did Lee Matthews compare to Kevin Sheedy? Any Tiananmen Square references? Did he like to sort of...
Lee had themes, but he was, chalk and cheese, many ways to skin a cat, 4 premierships each, legends of the game. Yeah. Lee was straight down the line. What he said he meant. He was pretty rational, pragmatic. Sheeds would play a few games, like when we were playing well, Sheeds would go, if we're 5% off, this mob Fitzroy are going to beat us, and they only have to be 5% above, and we're going to be in trouble. It'll be a tight game. Lee Matthews before a game would say, "Boys, if we do this, we'll flog this side."
Yeah.
Not that arrogantly, but he would say, "We should do this and this, and that will make us win," rather than all the opposition. So Sheeds was probably 50% us, 50% opposition. Lee was 80-20, 90,
manage what you
90,
can manage.
10.
Yeah, if it bleeds.
Well, that was a great
famous line.
It was a great theme.
Yeah.
The great Essendon, it was round 10, so in 2001, up at the Gabba.
Yeah.
We were 4 and 5, I think. We'd just been flogged by Carlton by about 60 points at Princes Park, and then lost close to Adelaide. And the Predator movie came out, and it was, they were getting, some Predator was getting all the guys, and
if it bleeds,
Schwarzenegger says, if it bleeds, we can kill it.
That's it.
And that was it. That was Essendon.
Yeah.
If they bleed. And every bloke was given a role that day. Okay, you're doing that. You're with Hurd. Shawnee Hart, you're going to chase, whoever it was, Joe Mercedes. And every player played their role to a T, and the light bulb, it was a light bulb moment for the players. They said, oh, geez, if I do that, and everyone else, I trust that they'll do it.
Yeah, interesting.
And, history, 16 games in a row.
Yeah.
I think won the next 4 the following year, but marched on to a famous premiership.
Well, I think it was 2001 where the Bombers were trailing North Melbourne by about 70 points at one stage.
Early, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they came back to win that game. Matty Lloyd kicked 8 goals, I believe. Jason Johnson had an incredible game. And it was almost like we flew too close to the sun in terms of being the perfect team.
Yep.
No one has a right to win from 70 points behind.
No.
And they did it, and it was almost like the footy god said, "That's it, no more for you." and the Lions came down in September and won the game. That had we won, as you quite rightly said, it would have franked that era of being a great Essendon era, as opposed to perhaps a lost opportunity.
Yeah. And there was another team involved at that period too, Port Adelaide, who...
Yeah.
So the Brisbane team, we never finished on top those 4 years.
Right.
We were always second, Port, third. It was Port or it was Essendon in 01.
Yeah.
And we just managed to win the first final, go straight through to a prelim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The game we didn't go straight through was the 2004 when... we had to then go through the repechage almost, come down to the MCG 2 weeks in a row, and that killed us.
They had to win, right? Because they had such a successful team finishing on top of the ladder, and it was eluding them.
Yep.
And that 2004, had they not won that would have been, again, a great waste of a very talented side.
In footy, in sport, you generally get what you deserve.
Yeah.
And they did. We did. Essendon did in 2000.
Yeah.
Maybe not in 01, but that you generally get what you deserve.
Yeah, that's a
nice
way to put it.
That's a good way to put it.
Now I think we've got time issues. The satellite link is probably going to drop at some stage. But I think you had some quick questions to ask Gary.
I did. Before we just do that, just very quickly, what people may not remember is you coached Essendon for one game in 2006. And that was when Sheedy did a shoulder at training.
Dean Sullivan knocked him out, and he had to have surgery, and Peter Jackson came over the top. I think Sheed still wanted to coach that game.
Right.
But Peter Jackson, because he was going to get surgery on the Monday, and, Sheeds is mad enough anyway without an anaesthetic. So Peter Jackson said, no, we'll have the assistant coaches doing the whole week.
Right.
And the preparation, and I think it was a breath of fresh air for the players as well.
Yeah.
We hadn't won for 12 or 13 weeks either.
Oh,
and
right.
It broke but it was a draw.
Yeah.
We were 2 goals up late in the game, or halfway through. We were a bit stodgy, and I said, Ricky Dyson go back to half back, so we just get a little bit of a good kick, and he played on Eddie Betts. Eddie Betts kicks the last 2. It's a draw. So well done, Gary.
That would have been a good feeling.
Yeah, it was good. I think just to have an experience there. I never saw myself as a senior coach, never aspired to it.
Yeah.
But I was comfortable in a role. I played for 18 years at a couple of clubs as an assistant.
Yeah, well,
nice,
a great
nice.
career too, particularly with Brisbane. So
certainly got our bums kicked at times.
Yeah.
The second time I was at Brisbane,
Yeah.
and when I was at Essendon as
who
well.
was the senior coach on your second stint at Brisbane?
Well, the first, second stint was Michael Voss for 3 years, and then it was Lepich for 3.
Lepich.
Yeah, right.
And then back at Essendon, it was Sheeds, and then I had the Matthew Knights era as well.
Ah, right.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay. When it all sort of started to change at
Yes.
Essendon.
Yeah, things that were going through a transition.
Yeah, that's right. After 26 odd years, Sheedy leaving, it was always going to be hard.
Big shoes to
hard
fill.
shoes to fill.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. Okay, look, a few quick fire questions to wrap up. Just some things we're interested in. Who do you hate more, Collingwood or Carlton?
Equal.
Okay.
Equal.
All right.
Can't split
Can't split
them.
them. Okay, that's fair.
And whoever we're playing on that day,
Right. Okay. Are you a socks up or socks down?
socks up always.
Really?
Thank you for
Interesting,
that.
because
Thank
I
you.
know
I'm a big
you'd
fan
love
of
that.
that, yeah.
I don't know
you'd
how
love that.
blokes wear them down on their ankles. It feels heavier, I
I
reckon.
think they've got short socks now, haven't they?
Yeah, they must, yes. And especially in the wet weather.
Yeah.
My God, it's
Yeah.
like carrying, the people go for their exercises
Yeah.
and then, they carry the weights and they've got them around their ankles. No,
They're AFL
Okay.
Lift 'em
footballers,
up.
Gary. I think they can manage
Who
those
was-
heavy socks.
Who was the biggest pants man, Mark Mercuri or Glenn Hawker?
Oh, jeez, that's a...
ooh.
mate,
I reckon Glenn Hawker, because he would have been in the era, like Harves as well, of black leather pants. So,
Really?
Yeah.
And that did the trick.
Harves had green jeans as well. Green jeans. So he wasn't a pants man. He was the furthest away from having any
Right. Okay.
right to being a clothes horse. But
Okay.
yeah, Glenn Hawker.
Okay, and finally, if you were stuck in a lift for 4 hours, who would you prefer to share that lift with, Kevin Sheedy or Lee Matthews?
Ooh. Can I have both? Because then they'd be probably at each other. I don't think they respect each other now,
Do
but
they?
I'm not sure whether they liked each other in the early days.
Really?
It'd be good to see him one-on-one. I could be the bloke in the
mediator.
white suit
Yes.
going whack, down for the count. 1, 2.
You might want to have
Okay.
a padded lift, I think,
Yes.
for that.
Probably,
Okay.
probably Kevin if it was one, because he has so many stories
Yes.
to tell.
Yeah.
We
Right.
could go to
Yes.
Mars, and
I
we
would
could go.
imagine.
We'd
Yes.
go the whole solar
Yes.
system, wouldn't we?
He'd cover off a lot of
He would have
things.
worked out how to get the lift going, probably, Sheedy. He would have had Gary up through the hatch.
Yes.
He probably
Working it
would have
out.
broken down the lift because he wanted to talk to me for 4 hours.
On that note, I reckon
I
let's
think
wrap it
that's,
up. You
yeah.
have been very generous
Amazing.
with your time. We really appreciate it. It's an absolute delight for us,
Yeah.
and I think the
What an
and
honour.
our
What an
community
honour.
as well.
Yeah.
They'll get a lot. They'll get a lot out of it.
Thank
Gary-
you, Smoking.
Yeah, thank you so
Big
much.
T.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank
It's
you
been such a
very
pleasure
much.
to have you, and
Pleasure
you're
to be
always
here.
always welcome back.
Yes.
If you're really lost for something to do when you come to Melbourne.
And if you want to get Gary's insight, he's very vocal on Twitter. I
Yeah,
love a lot of the
worth
stuff
following,
that
worth
you post there.
following.
You,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
crack out a lot of good material.
I'm mainly on social media to see what other people are doing, but
Right.
yes, I can get a little bit outspoken. And
Yes.
but
No, we love it.
there
we
it
love
is.
We
There
love
it is.
That's why we got you here. All right. Thanks again for watching.
Thank
we'll
you, everybody.
See you
Thanks,
next
guys.
time.
See you around.
Thank you. See ya.